Ellie, are you there?
Hello.
Hello, how are you?
Very well. 1 second, I'll just get my technology set up.
So you're in London today?
Yes, I am. Yes.
Okay. Ellie, before you begin your presentation, I'd love to hear a bit about the support you've received from King Charles for your environmental campaign and your children's book. Could you share how his endorsement has influenced your work and its impact on your mission to raise environmental awareness among your young readers?
Sorry, I was just getting set up with my presentation. Yes, I will talk all about that in my talk. So that was a huge part of how my journey unfolded as a writer. So can I just set this going, please?
Okay. Okay, now the set is yours. Just start your presentation and all of us here will follow you.
Okay, so can you see my presentation and not my speech?
Yeah.
Okay, lovely. Whoops. Salamat siang. Thank you so much for attending
Selamat
today's
siang.
talk and workshop. Oh, if I go too fast, please tell me to stop. I'm very pleased to be here, although I wish I could be there in person. My name is Ellie Jackson. I am a children's author, a mother of 4 young children, and a teacher. My books are bestsellers, reaching over 2 million children around the world. They have received personal support from King Charles and Sir David Attenborough, as you mentioned there. That was incredible to have that support. To know that the two very well-known environmental figures in the world have supported the books really opened so many doors for me. And I was really excited to receive their letters that went on to support everything that I did. And I then felt confident in who I was and what I was doing. I realized then that what I had to offer as an author was really worth listening to. So I hope you enjoy my speech now. I would like to talk to you about how I became an author, because I'm sure all of you have your own paths to writing. I didn't ever dream of being a writer. I just felt I was in the right place at the right time. And it all started for me on this beach here. My earliest memories as a child are of being outside, surrounded by nature, on a beach, in the sea, walking through the woods. I was very lucky to spend a lot of time on the beach. It looks beautiful here, lovely calm sea, beautiful sunny day, and we would find so many interesting things that had been washed ashore. As children, it felt like finding treasure. I remember finding this strange-looking seed pod. It's probably not that strange to you, but to me, on a beach in England, it was very unusual. We sent it to a museum to find out what it was, and they wrote back to say, if I planted it, it would grow into this amazing vine tree. We don't have trees like this in England, so where had it come from? It had washed down the Amazon River and floated thousands of miles across the Atlantic Ocean, ending up on the beach for me to find in the UK. How incredible was that for a child to find? And I remember feeling a very strong connection to the world around me. Unfortunately, on this beach, lots of rubbish also got washed up. Much of it had writing in different languages, and I would be excited to think it had come across the ocean from Mexico or China. My brother and I would play games with the rubbish. We'd jump over it, it was trampolines. We made camps and dens, and we built rafts. Not once did I think to pick it up. Not once did we wonder where all this rubbish went. And never did I think it could hurt animals. Even when dead animals washed up on the beach, we never thought of the link between rubbish and danger for animals. It wasn't even called rubbish back then. It was called flotsam and jetsam, and it was exciting to think where it had come from. And it was part of my childhood games. I took my daughter back to this beach when she was just 5. I stood at the top of the beach. I threw out my arms and said, "Look at my favourite beach." She turned to me and said, "Mummy, what a dump. We need to clean it up." I was horrified. But this is the power of knowledge, the power of education, and the difference between a generation. She realised what I hadn't as a child, and she realised that because she'd seen it with her own eyes. Moving forward in my life, I was a very good student at school and a very well-behaved child at home. I absolutely loved reading. It was something I would be doing any time I had a moment spare. I always had a book in my hand. And the books I loved are still loved by children today around the world. Authors such as Roald Dahl and Enid Blyton. Classic adventure stories, funny stories, animal stories. I loved them all. Ooh, sorry. I came from a big family with lots of brothers and sisters, and my parents would ask us to help them. I was always reading whilst I was helping. Reading while washing the car, reading while doing the sweeping and the vacuuming, reading while helping in the garden, and reading while watching TV. Because I loved reading, I also loved writing my own stories. And I won prizes for my stories at school. This gave me huge confidence to keep on writing, and I continued writing as an adult. My first attempts were all true stories about animal rescues. I thought they were brilliant, and I sent them off to the publishers, and I was rejected by all of them. They were too long, they were too short, they were too old-fashioned, and they weren't the right style. For anyone who's received letters like this from publishers, it's very difficult to feel positive about your writing afterwards. So I stopped writing then for 15 years. At first I became a teacher, then I moved to Australia, and then I had my 4 children. It was while my children were very little that we lived on an island in the Great Barrier Reef. This is more familiar to you perhaps because it's very similar to your beautiful Indonesian islands that I've spent a lot of time travelling in. So we had palm trees and white sand beaches with beautiful corals and exotic animals. And we absolutely loved it here. My children thrived. I took my children to the beach to see a turtle being released back into the sea. And my eldest daughter was then 4 years old. She turned to me and said, "Mummy, what was wrong with the turtle? Why did she need rescuing?" So we went to the turtle hospital. Oops, sorry. We listened to the keeper talk about the problem of plastic for turtles. If turtles eat plastic, it gets trapped in their stomachs. They become so buoyant, they cannot dive for food. And they get stuck floating on the surface of the water, where hopefully they're rescued. My daughter understood this, and she made quickly the connection between the plastic on the beach and the turtles in the sea. The next day when I took her to the beach, she wanted to collect all the plastic rubbish she could find. And with each piece she collected, she said, "Mummy, I'm saving a turtle." And we couldn't leave the beach until every piece had been picked up. Here she is here. I realised that here was a young child who understood something powerful. She realised what so many of us haven't, that we need to keep our oceans clean, we need to look after our animals, and we all need to do something about it now. So I wanted to write my first book about this issue. I'd seen the impact it had on my daughter, and I wanted this book to make a big difference. After my first experience with publishers, where I was told no, I didn't want to go down that route again. So I decided to publish the book myself. I found an illustrator who was a friend of mine. Our baby sons were also good friends. And you'll see there my terrible drawing with my children's crayons. But I had in my head what I wanted the story to look like. So I showed her my scribbles, and from that, she produced some beautiful illustrations to go with the story. And even now, 8 years later, every time I see them, I still absolutely adore them. The gentle story, together with realistic watercolour artwork, has produced a book that has impacted and inspired a whole generation of children. I want to pause here and ask you to reflect. Take a few minutes to think about your writing journey. What experiences have shaped your writing? And was there a turning point that led you to write? For me, it was very clear. It was seeing that turtle going into the sea with my daughter. That's one moment in my life that changed my life forever. Perhaps you had the same. Or maybe it was a slow realization. But what was your experience of writing your first book? So have a think here. You can just think about it or write something down. I think it's important, our experiences, how they've led us on our journeys.
Kita bisa langsung, Mas Yusafat? Sudah, saya memastikan lagi apakah alat penerjemah sudah ada di teman-teman semua? Sudah ya?
Okay. And the next thing I'd like you to think is our encounters with nature have a big impact on us. They certainly did me. But have any encounters that you've had possibly could shape your writing? Have you ever rescued an animal, big or small, a pet or a wild animal? Have you witnessed beauty or destruction? Anything that you can think of in nature for you that you could draw on to write in your stories? Have a think. I've seen many animals being rescued. I watch videos on them very often, but it's the real encounters that help us. Only last week I was eating fish and chips in my car, and a seagull landed on the bonnet wanting some chips, and you could see the seagull through the glass, very close, and you felt this connection with this animal. So it doesn't have to be some amazing rescue that you took part in, but some little day-to-day interaction that helps you feel that connection. And where do you get your energy from in nature? For me, it's the beach and the sea, but for you, it could be the mountains, the fields, the forests. If you imagine a happy place outdoors, where do your thoughts take you? For me, it's often Indonesia, the Indonesian scenery. But why is that place meaningful to you? Do you have family that live there? Is it on your bucket list? Do you want to go there? You spent time in that environment and have happy memories. These ideas are important in helping you to write environmental stories. You need to have a love of nature to write these stories. So take a few minutes just to think about where you get your energy from. For me, it's the beach. For my husband, he loves the woods. He loves the forest. That's where he was brought up. His childhood games were in the forest. I like the woods, but not so much as the beach. Now, from my first book, I've since written 7 other books in the series, and each book covers a different environmental issue. Plastic pollution, that's very obvious. We have balloon releases where people let balloons up into the sky, and of course what goes up must come down. The terrible devastation of fishing nets. You can see there just how dangerous these nets, these lost nets are for our animals. Deforestation is a big problem, losing our forests at a fast rate. Climate change, bushfires, habitat loss and litter, all global problems that children do need to be aware of. It's how they're taught. That's the right way to do it. So each of my books follows a well-loved animal as they get into difficult situations caused by this issue. This is an illustration from one of my stories, and this story is the turtle who eats plastic. We have a puffin trapped entangled in balloons, a humpback whale who's trapped in nets, an orangutan whose home is destroyed, a polar bear lost at sea, a koala trapped by fire, a bee sick from chemicals, and a little hedgehog stuck and trapped in rubbish. All animals are in need of help, and all are rescued. So the idea behind my books is simple. I'm sure you follow this similar format when you're writing your stories. A happy beginning in a beautiful environment. We show the animal in its natural habitat, loving life, doing all the things they enjoy: swimming, flying, swinging, diving, hunting, snuffling. The scene is set for a lovely story. This is my text of my story, and I've had it translated into Indonesian, but this is my first page of my first book. And this picture really draws the children in. They're listening to the setting, they're imagining this wonderful island. Then something happens to the animal. Could be a storm, a shipwreck, an adventure. Perhaps they're lost, perhaps humans come in, or there's a fire, and this brings the drama into the story. Children start to feel the empathy, and they wonder what will happen. Perhaps they feel a connection that they can identify with the problem. So now the animal is in danger, and the issue of the book becomes clear. Are they trapped in plastic? Or did they eat something they shouldn't? In this case, this turtle has mistaken this plastic bag for jellyfish. And the problem with turtles is the food is trapped in their stomachs. When I get to this page in my story, I could be reading the book to 500 children, and the silence, you can hear a pin drop. They're mesmerized by this animal. They're up to this point, they're thinking the story and they're happy, and then the storm, and then they eat something, and then there's a realization. So is your animal now without a home? Are they lost? Are they helpless? The children are now fully invested, and they're desperate for a happy ending. Who is coming to save the animal? Now, when you're writing environmental stories, it's really important not to blame specific people. So even though humans may have caused or contributed to the issue, they can also become the heroes. We don't want to make children who have families who work in these jobs feel bad about what their families do. This is a global issue. It's not something that can be solved on a very tiny scale like this. Families have to work, they have to work within the way that the industry is, and fishermen use fishing nets. We need trees for lots of different things, so we cannot make these industries the villains of the story. Instead, I sometimes like to make them the heroes. So here we've got the fishermen to the rescue. We're going to focus on the kind people in the story, the caring people, the brave people, people who work as a team or people who work alone. They're all helping to rescue the animal. And sometimes this animal may need extra help or care from a rescue centre or from an animal hospital. And this resolution is always welcomed by children because it inspires them to want to help too. I want children to think, maybe I can be the one to save the animal. Who knows, these children could grow up to become the vets, the marine biologists, the animal workers, the care workers. So we want to inspire them to think that could be them. Of course, there is always going to be a happy ending. The animal's released or returned home. The home may be slightly different or it may be the same as before, but either way, it's a happy place again. Clean seas, beautiful beaches, beautiful forests, so many flowers. However your animal lives, we want to show them back in their lovely environment. Now, this is the last page of my story here. And I like to show, here's the real jellyfish the animal's eating, and perhaps there's a friend waiting for her too there. So we want the children to end on this happy note. It reassures the child that all is okay, the animal will be happy, and there's a peace to the end of the story. Now, children expect a happy ending. They have heard stories since they were very young, and they need to know that everything will turn out well. To deny them this ending would be unfair and upsetting, especially in environmental stories. So that's really, really important there. So you can see the format of my books is really simple, and it stays mostly the same for each book. The animal changes, the issue changes, but the format does not. All of my stories are true. These things really did happen to these animals, and the truth of these stories gives them strong appeal. There is, of course, a big demand for fiction books about the environment, and these are important too. I'm sure many of you will be able to write in this style. Me personally, I don't feel creative enough to write fiction. My books are non-fiction narratives or stories based on true events. I believe we should show the truth about the environment, but we must do it in a way that is right for children, age appropriate and gentle. Sadly, I have seen teachers who share upsetting videos with young children. One teacher came to me, she said, "We're really excited you're coming to the school. I wanted to share a video with the children before you came. It was the one with the straw coming out of the turtle's nose. The blood, the horror, something we as adults find upsetting." And she said, the whole class was crying. She said, they're 5 years old. And I thought, this is crazy. This is not the right way to teach children. These are their best favourite animals, and they're in pain and they're upset. And this is the absolute wrong way to teach them. Unfortunately, many teachers are not trained in how to do this properly. If you look at this picture here, how can we show young children this harsh reality of the problem in our planet? We need to show them in the right way. And young children can easily become worried or anxious, even about things that are not real. We all know their fear of monsters under the bed or fear of the dark. It could be very easy for them to worry about their favourite animals. If they see too many sad things, their imagination might take over. They may become too upset or worried to help. They may feel the problem is too big and that they cannot make a difference. They have a word for this now called eco-anxiety. Especially for children, this is a real problem. But your stories can help with this. High-quality stories told in a gentle way. We can help frame these issues for children. And we can help them understand why we all need to help. And then they can feel excited to get involved. This is what we want. Through reading these stories, children can be inspired to do little things to start a change. This could be in the form of litter picking or beach cleaning, recycling or campaigning, saving energy, letter writing, walking or cycling to school, and planting or growing food, flowers or trees. And importantly, they can also share the message with their friends and family. And these are things that children all around the world have been taking part in. And it all starts with a story. The stories give the teachers a starting point. It helps open up the conversations about these issues. So you should feel really excited to think about the impact your stories will have. There are several things you need to consider before choosing the subject of your book. In my experience, for younger children, it's easier to focus on one animal, one issue, or one problem at a time. If you're writing simple chapter books, you could expand on this and go into more detail. You could decide to choose a familiar animal, one that you have personal experience with, or that is local to you. And I always tell the children this when I'm teaching them how to write stories. It makes your stories real. And writing about something you've seen firsthand can bring real passion to your story from any animal encounter you've had. In the wild, in a zoo, at home, or through education. And these are pictures here of my children just having simple animal encounters here. And there's that seagull on the car I spoke about earlier last week. A tiger in a zoo, a kangaroo, just feeding the ducks, feeding the lambs, holding a snake, I think it was a boa constrictor, and this turtle model here, my youngest daughter. But for me, I've dived and swum with turtles. I've been very lucky, which is amazing to do. That was off Lombok, swimming with turtles there. I've seen puffins on the cliffs. I've seen whales jumping and splashing, and we had koalas in our garden in Australia. Of course, we've seen bees, and I know lots about flowers, and I found hedgehogs at school. I've spent a lot of time in the Indonesian rainforest, in Sulawesi, so I can relate to that habitat, but I've never seen an orangutan. And I've never seen a polar bear. I've never been anywhere as cold as the Arctic. I know nothing about this animal. Yet the issues it faces are just as important to learn about. So for me, the polar bear book was actually one of the hardest to write. I had no direct or lived experience with that animal or habitat. All of the other animals I knew something about. So it's up to you what part of the environment you write about. But something familiar may be helpful to start with. It's also really important to write about real animals, not made-up creatures or not talking cartoon characters. My books don't contain any dialogue at all. My editor, if I get a chance to work with an editor, they often say, "Oh, put dialogue in." I don't feel like I need it. Not having dialogue takes the emotion away from the animals, and it puts the emotion into the hands of the children. The children can decide, is the animal happy or sad? Is it lost or excited? And they can infer this from the illustrations. You can add adjectives to support, but the emotion comes from the reader and not the animal. That's not to say there isn't room for plenty of exciting dialogue, and I leave that in your capable hands. I wish I could write like that, but I purposely leave dialogue out to make room for imagination. I choose animals that are well loved and recognisable. Whilst a species like a lesser spotted cat shark might be endangered, is it something children will connect with? The closer the connection they have, the stronger the impact of the story. I remember visiting our local aquarium, and every time the turtle swam past, all the children would shout, "The turtle! The turtle!" And they all rushed to see it. They didn't do that for the happy little lemon shark or the quietly creeping crab. So choose your animal carefully. One of your greatest strengths as Indonesian writers is your incredible environmental diversity. Your country is full of a wealth of species and habitats, and this gives you so many chances to connect with your readers. Orangutans, sea turtles, monkeys, tropical birds, sunbears. These are your animals. Exotic for us here in England, pretty normal for you. Children may have seen them on TV, in zoos, or even in real life. But if a child knows the animal or have seen the place where they live, they feel that connection. For the setting, I choose natural places that children recognise. Again, you're very lucky you've got rich and diverse habitats nearby. Colourful reefs, towering rainforests, bushy mangroves, lush mountains, and smouldering volcanoes. You could be in a coastal village, or a bustling market, or a rice field surrounded by volcanoes and mountains. These are places your children will recognise, so you don't need to explain them. You just bring them gently to life. So let's have a think here and get some ideas flowing. Think about what animal you could choose. Where does the animal live? What is it like there? What do they like to eat? And what do they like to do? So I'd like you to go ahead and pick an animal. Perhaps it's an animal that I've talked about here or something you're familiar with. It doesn't have to be Indonesian, could be any animal from around the world. I suggest something in local to you because it's easier. For example, turtle who lives in the coral reef. It's warm, the water is clear. Surrounded by beautiful fish, it likes to eat seagrass, it dives deep, and it floats on the surface. And just take some time just to think about your animal here. This is how I always plan my stories. The animal comes first, and then the rest of the story follows. But you need to get in your head what this animal's habitat is like. Okay, so you should have your idea for an animal. Now, when I first started writing my story, I didn't particularly like turtles that much. I didn't know much about them. I thought they were beautiful, but you need to do the research to find out all the different things. A lot of my stories, I start to write and then I realize I need to find out more, and I've often got the animal totally wrong. For example, I did write a story about an orangutan, and in my story, he was living on the ground, he was living with his family, and I wrote the story, and then I happened to meet an orangutan charity here in England. It was in my local town, it was very random, I bumped into them. And I said, I've written this story, I need you to read it and help me. And they said, you've got it all wrong. Orangutans live by themselves. They very rarely come down to the forest floor. They're all in the treetops. So I had to rewrite my whole story. So make sure you understand your animal before you write the story. It sounds obvious, doesn't it? But I thought I knew. This is a horrible picture here. Because you need to think about what issue you're going to write about. With the environment, there's so many different environmental problems. They're not appropriate or appealing to children. Lots of people suggest ideas for my stories, and I've been asked to write about the problem of cigarette butts, the problem of sewage and wet wipes, and I've also been asked to write about graphic whale, dolphin and seal cub industries. Of course, these are important topics, but they're not appealing, appropriate or suitable for children. I really challenge any writer to make those stories age appropriate for a 5-year-old. It's just, you can't do it. So please choose your issue carefully. Choose something you care about, something you feel passionate about. Maybe you live in a crowded town or city and you want to encourage more sustainable transport. Perhaps you live near beautiful forests and you want to protect them. Or maybe you see the impact of litter and want to help clean it up. I've got some ideas here for global environmental issues and also sustainability topics. Have a look and see if any of these could apply to your animal or something that you're interested in. You don't have to pick one from this list. Sorry, I'm just having a problem with my technology. 1 second. Sorry. Oh no. Okay, back up. No. You're going to have to bear with me. Have a look at that list. Almost there. So sorry. Right, just lost my speech then. Minor panic. Now I focus on one issue per book to keep it simple. I don't write stories about all these problems. A very well-known charity in this country, I had a conversation with them and they said, keep it simple. Their message, they stick to one thing and that's it. The rest of the knowledge comes later. So each book, I really urge you to think of one issue and stick with that. If you're writing a chapter book, you can add in more, but for picture books for younger children, one issue. Oh, sorry, I've lost my speech. 1 second. Oh, it's frustrating. So for my turtle, the problem is plastic in the ocean. The turtle mistakes it for food. So with your animal, think how your problem relates to your animal. Are they eating the problem? Is it trapped in it? Have a think of these questions and see if you can apply them to the animal that you're thinking of. This forms the plan for your story. Obviously, this is just an example. For me, when I'm writing my stories, I have my plan, the beginning, the problem, the solution, the ending, and then I pad it out, I bring in extra details. And once I have my plan, I might then go out, I take my children to school, I come back, I sit in my office, and one day, in the middle of nothing, just comes my idea to write the story. I have my plan, and then my story, I get inspired, and I sit and write it. It takes about 2 hours. And mostly what I write then is the final story. Maybe a few words I change. So for the language, the style, and the tone, I use simple sentence structures, short paragraphs, and clear vocabulary. I also write how children are taught, and teachers like this. I avoid long descriptive passages. The challenge is to stay engaging and be concise, and every line must move the story forward or build connection to the animal. You know this as writers. I often write 2,000 words, and then I have to make it shorter down to 1,000. So my picture books are about 1,000 words. I find this really hard, I'm sure you'll agree. It's not just what you say, it's how you say it. So I aim for a gentle, calm tone, even when the animal is in danger. But the story is never frightening. It may be sad or thought-provoking, but never scary, and this is really important. The tone of the book is vital. We need children to stay with the story and not turn away from it. When I read my stories, the children are sat there the whole way through. Even teachers say, this child will never sit and listen, or this one is too naughty and won't concentrate or may have to leave the room. They sit there and they listen. And at the end, the teacher says, I've never seen them listen so well. So it's really important to get that tone right. When I'm writing my stories, I'm also writing as a parent. Some of you may be parents as well, or you may have younger siblings or children in your family that you know well. Think about what books you would be happy for them to read. Consider the impact of every word. Is it going to be upsetting? Then it must be changed. Swap the adjective, rewrite the sentence. There is no room or no need to scare children away from this. We want to inspire them. If the story turns children away, then that is a disaster. That goes against everything we want with environmental books. And this is why balance is important. And this is where illustrations help massively. In my books, the pictures are just as important as the words. Excuse me. For young children, they may be even more important. Don't tell my illustrator that. The pictures help tell the story. They support the emotion and they make the issue clear without too much text. I choose to use watercolour illustrations. These are gentle and realistic with soft colours. This is different from bold and bright digital artwork or cartoons, and it creates balance to the difficult subject. Children can feel what's happening, but they're not traumatised. They can enjoy the beauty and still learn something important. So if you work closely with your illustrator, Talk about the tone you want and make sure they understand the story and the audience. Use gentle lines, soft colours, and clear facial expressions. Because often, with no dialogue in these stories, you're telling the story through the animal's eyes. Even children from age 1 or 2 can understand the eyes. So we have happy eyes, sad eyes, scared or relieved eyes, kind human faces. Use the artwork to show what you don't explain in words. So a plastic bag that looks like a jellyfish floating in the sea. This saves words and it frees up space to add details and descriptions. So to summarise, use a clear, simple structure with a beginning, problem, solution, and hope. Choose real animals and places to ground the story in truth. Focus on one issue, told gently and clearly. Keep language age appropriate, short, simple, and emotive. And use a tone of hope. Never overwhelm the reader with fear. Use gentle illustrations to support and enhance the emotional message. Now let's look how to make your story connect deeply with your audience. Global environmental issues are important, but the most impactful stories are sometimes the ones children can relate to. Something they've seen themselves, a recognisable animal or a familiar setting. The challenge is to choose an issue that fits the environment, then build your story around it. Make the message clear, focused, and emotionally powerful. But also connect it to Indonesian values and culture. Show children working together, show family involvement, and show traditional knowledge being used to help the environment. You could include, for example, a grandparent teaching their grandchild how to plant mangroves, or a village working together to clean a river. These stories don't just teach about nature, they also reinforce important human values, like cooperation and teamwork, respect for elders, and living in harmony with nature.